Mini is no stranger to a dramatic reinvention with high expectations from the public, but is the new Mini Cooper Electric its most significant new model ever? We're in Munich to see it and the new Mini Countryman. In this video, we're going to give you a rundown on both of these cars. We're going to find out if the fatal flaw in the previous Mini Electric has now been fixed. We're also going to tell you why this comes with a dog, but is nothing like a cat. Before we start, if you want to see lots more videos like this, subscribe to our channel and go to whatcar.com for a great deal on your next car. So, the new Mini Cooper Electric. This is a new car with a new name, and we'll talk more about that later on. But in terms of dimensions, this actually is very similar to before. In one sense, because this has a similar footprint to the old car. In fact, it's only 8mm longer than the previous Mini Electric. But the distance between the front and rear wheels is longer in this car. This has also got a wider track, it's got shorter overhangs, and really, there is so much that's new with this new Mini Cooper Electric. Obviously, it's got a new look, it's on a new platform, but perhaps the single biggest change is inside. Which set some alarm bells ringing, because the previous Mini Electric had a fantastic interior. The infotainment system was one of the best around, the build quality was rock solid, and it had a generally very premium feel throughout. It wasn't just better than all of its rivals that cost the same money, but it was better than many other electric cars that were significantly more expensive. In short, there wasn't much wrong with it at all. There are some similarities in here. So you've got this circular infotainment screen, you've got some toggle switches as well, but apart from that, this really is very different from before, with much more of a kind of minimalist approach to things. You've even got a new steering wheel here, so it's apparently 20mm smaller in diameter, and it's got a thicker rim. It also has a two-spoke design, and this strap thing down here is an optional extra, or it's standard on some of the higher trim levels. This 3D knit thing on the dashboard here is also standard, and this is said generally to be a leather-free interior. And of course, there's lots of different choice of colour with the new Mini Cooper Electric as well. Now, the quality in here generally is good compared to this electric car's rivals, like the Fiat 500e, the MG4, the Peugeot E208. But is this actually a step forwards compared to the old Mini Electric? I'm not so sure, because in this electric car interior, you've got some materials around that look and feel a little bit cheap, to be honest, which you didn't really have in the old Mini Electric. But still, even if this doesn't feel like a step forwards, this is still ultimately good compared to the other rivals that this is up against. Now, this infotainment system runs BMW's latest iDrive software, but obviously it has a Mini interface instead. We can't tell you whether it's any good or not really, because this is a pre-production model, it's not quite finished, so we haven't had a chance to have a proper play. But what we can say is that it's a real shame that the climate controls are now on the touchscreen. It would have been so much better, easier, safer if they were down here with some toggle switches instead, like with the old car. But what you have down here instead of the climate controls is something to cycle through some different experiences, which are essentially different drive modes, but they also control things like the interior lighting. You have some sound designs that come with them as well, which is all very nice, but it would have been more useful if we could have some physical controls for the air conditioning and the fan speed. What you also get with this infotainment system is a dog called Spike. And this is apparently an avatar, which is a nod to the English Bulldog that Mini used as part of its advertising when it relaunched in 2001. Now, the reason it's important to point out that this is nothing like a cat is because of the platform that this is built on. So it's the result of a joint partnership between BMW and Great Wall Motors. And Great Wall Motors is the Chinese company behind the Aura Funky Cat. But this is definitely not just a rebadged version of the Funky Cat, which, to be honest, is a good thing, because that is not a particularly good EV. Mini has told us that not one single component is shared between the Mini Cooper Electric and the Aura Funky Cat. They are totally different cars. But like the Funky Cat, the Cooper Electric will be built in China. Although apparently there is a possibility that in the future, production could be moved to Mini's Oxford factory. Now, the previous Mini Electric really wasn't very good when it came to rear seat space. Like before, this is only available with 3 doors, so getting into these rear seats still involves a bit of contortion, but once you're back here, this is bigger than the Mini Electric, so you do have more room. You don't have loads of room though, so you can see legroom is still quite cramped, headroom isn't particularly generous. Now there are quite a lot of other 5-door small electric car alternatives which are more practical when it comes to rear seat space. But for lots of people looking at this car, that might not matter at all. You might just be looking for a small electric car to take you around the city and maybe carry your kids around in the back every now and then. In which case, the space available back here is fine. You also can have a sunroof with your Mini Cooper Electric. That isn't standard, it's an optional extra, but if you do go for it, it's good to know that it doesn't impact on rear headroom at all. The boot hasn't changed much from the previous car. It has around 200 litres of space, which isn't a lot. It's more than a Fiat 500, but a Renault Zoe and a Peugeot E208 both have bigger boots. This new car also has a new name. Mini's model naming system is a bit confusing, so let's try and break it down for you. In the previous generation of this car, you could buy a Mini Hatch, which was the petrol-powered version, or a Mini Electric. But now, the petrol-powered version is called the Mini Cooper, and this electric model is the Mini Cooper Electric. Cooper was used in the previous generation of the petrol-powered car, but it was used more as a kind of trim-level name to give some indication as to what was powering the car. But now Cooper has become a standardised part of the model lineup. But what about the fuel-powered version of the Mini? Well, the first thing to point out is that there will be one, and it will be sold alongside this electric version. And we've been told that the two cars will look very similar on the outside and be virtually identical inside as well. But the fuel-powered version will be on a totally different platform to this electric car. In fact, it's going to be on an updated version of the platform that the fuel-powered Mini is on right now, and that one dates back to 2014. It will also be built in Oxford. But now back to electric matters, and the big question with this car is, has it improved on the fatal flaw of the previous Mini Electric? Now, if you remember that car, it was a really good EV. But the one huge problem with it was the range that it offered. In cold weather, in real-world driving conditions, you'd be lucky to get a bit more than 100 miles from a full charge, which really isn't very good. But with this new model, the range is better. So if you go for the Mini Cooper Electric E, then you get a battery with a usable capacity of 38.3 kilowatt hours, which gives it an official range of 199 miles. But if you go for the Mini Cooper Electric SE, then you get a bigger battery with a capacity that's around 51 kilowatt hours, and that gives it an official range of 249 miles. Which is much better than before. The charging speed is a big improvement as well. The old Mini Electric could only accept a maximum charging rate of around 50 kilowatts. But this new Mini Cooper Electric can accept 75 kilowatts for the small battery and 95 kilowatts for the bigger battery. But while that's better than before, in the wider electric car market today, it's not hugely impressive. The Peugeot E208, for example, can charge at up to 100 kilowatts, and that's an electric car which has already been around for a few years. Now, the power and performance on offer from the new Mini Cooper Electric is actually pretty much the same as the old Mini Electric. And you might think, what, the new car's not any quicker or more powerful? But remember, the old Mini Electric was actually really quick by small electric car standards. So in fact, the quoted 0 to 62 miles per hour time of this new Mini Cooper Electric is the same as the Abarth 500e, which sells itself as a proper electric hot hatch. Plus, there's going to be even quicker Mini Cooper Electrics in the future. There's said to be a performance-focused John Cooper Works model on the way with 250 brake horsepower. Now, this is a 3-door car, but will we see any other versions of the Mini Cooper Electric in the future? Well, a 5-door version has been ruled out, but you might have noticed earlier this year there was a limited edition version of the Mini Electric as a convertible with a rather high price tag. So who knows, maybe in the future there might be a convertible version of this car. If there is, let's hope it's not limited edition, and let's hope it has a slightly lower price tag. Now, you might be expecting that with bigger batteries and a longer range, this new Mini Cooper Electric will also come with a higher price than the old one. But the good news is that the entry-level version of this car starts at £30,000, which is actually a bit cheaper than the outgoing model. Even the new range-topping Mini doesn't cost more than the previous range-topping version. So that means the new car is still, like the old one, very competitive in the small electric car class compared to its rivals. It is, though, like every other EV, more expensive than most versions of the MG4. Next, the new Mini Countryman. Now, unlike the new Mini Cooper Electric, the changes in dimensions with this new Mini Countryman are very considerable all round compared to the old model. So this now is Mini's biggest ever car, and it's also the first Mini ever to be built in Germany. This is the third generation Countryman, and underneath this is actually very similar to the new BMW X1. And like that car, you can get a fuel-powered version of this or a fully electric one. There won't be a plug-in hybrid though, and in the UK there won't be a diesel either. The electric versions of the new car will be called Countryman E and Countryman SE. Both versions get the same 63.7 kilowatt-hour battery, but the ranges and power are different between the two cars. The SE is four-wheel drive and more powerful and more expensive, but gets a shorter range than the front-wheel drive and less powerful E. The maximum charging rate the electric Countryman can accept is 130 kilowatts, which is enough for a 10 to 80% charge in 29 minutes. When it comes to the interior, you'll notice that it looks virtually identical to the new Mini Cooper we were sat in earlier. It features the same layout, infotainment system, and lots of the same materials too. So what's it like in the rear seats in the Mini Countryman? Well, you can see with the driver's seat in my driving position, it's really pretty generous back here. I've got a really good amount of leg room. There's good space under the seat in front for my feet as well. Headroom is okay. If you do go for this optional panoramic sunroof, then it cuts into the headroom available. But you can see, even with it, I've got a decent amount of clearance above my head here. The windows aren't the biggest in the world, but you've got some extra glass behind you as well. So generally, it does feel quite open and spacious. The boot offers 460 litres of storage, making it the biggest mini boot ever. It's very similar in size to the impressively practical Volvo XC40, but interestingly, around 80 litres less than what you find in the very similar BMW X1. Now, Mini caused quite a stir when it released its Union Jack style tail lights in the old car. They do feature in the new Countryman and in the new Mini Cooper Electric, but tellingly, because of customer feedback, you can change the lighting signature here so that it's not a Union Jack. Unlike the Mini Cooper, this Mini Countryman has had a significant price rise compared to the old model. But it's not quite a fair comparison because the old Countryman wasn't available as a fully electric model. So the £29,000 starting price for that car was for a petrol-powered version. The new Countryman E starts a little over £42,000 and the range-topping model is more than £47,000. While that sounds expensive, it is a good chunk cheaper than the closely related BMW iX1, and it undercuts the electric XC40. A smart #1 is cheaper still though. So that is everything you need to know about the new Mini Cooper Electric and the new Mini Countryman. Tell us what you think of both of these new EVs in the comments below.